Hello, everyone. Today I'm with Sabrina Moncini, and Sabrina is an astrologer. She sees private clients and runs events and seminars. And I think you live just out of Florence, Sabrina?
Yes, I do.
And welcome.
Just 40 miles away from Florence.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Sabrina, I went to Rome a long time ago. And I went to the statue of Giordano Bruno. And for some reason, I was really overwhelmed with emotion. Not only his story of having his tongue taken out, but, you know, in the statue, there's that kind of cloak around him. And I think later I was thinking of, you know, that secret knowledge, the hermetic knowledge, that kind of esoteric knowledge, that old knowledge that was kind of, I don't know, maybe his death kind of symbolized what happened to some of that old knowledge. So what I was hoping today, because I know you've studied and researched and you have a particular interest in that period of the Renaissance, that we could talk a little bit about that. And then later, as I got involved with James Hillman, you know, he often speaks about Ficino and you know, what Ficino was doing through that period of the Renaissance and the Florentine Academy. So I wonder whether maybe we could start there with Ficino, some of what was happening at the time.
Yeah, that's a nice place to start. So Ficino we're talking about the beginning of 15th century in Florence. And Ficino was the son of the doctor of Cosimo the Older, Medici. So he was the founder of the Medici dynasty in Florence. And Cosimo was quite an interesting man because he was not only gifted with the very practical sense, because he was a merchant and a banker. And he started the first bank in Europe. And that's how the Medici made their fortune. But he was also a man that was so much attracted to knowledge and to deep knowledge. And so when Ficino was around 30 years old, as he was studying in all the university in Italy, in Florence and Pisa, Bologna, he asked him to start to translate some ancient text, and he told him he has this project of founding an academy devoted to Platonic and Hermetic Studies. And so Ficino was really excited about that because he was really fascinated with this knowledge. And we have to think that at the time, to get this knowledge, you have to send people around the world to find this old manuscript. And that's what Cosimo did. He paid people to go around and collect all this manuscript to bring it back to Florence. And so Ficino started to translate this text. He started from the Platonic text, but then at such a point, they managed to get the Hermetic text, and Cosimo wanted to read that. So he said, forget Plato for now and just, translate Hermes, because he was so fascinated with this knowledge, and Ficino as well. Because we have to think that Ficino was also interesting because he mostly was drawn to Arabic Hermeticism, which was the Hermetic that comes from Arabia, where, also there was this evolution with the magical environment related to Hermeticism, and it was really one with it. Magic was part of it, as was astrology, as was alchemy. And he had to combine this with Christianity because he was in a Christian environment, very strict one as well. And it was quite
just 1 second there. Was he a
Yeah.
priest? Someone told me he was a priest.
Yes, yes. Later on, he decided to become a priest, but he's been studying theology all his life, so he was already on that line.
Yeah.
And I think he was genuine in this side of putting together all this knowledge, deep Platonism, Neoplatonism, and Hermeticism with Christianity, because in the end, what characterized the philosophy of Ficino, at the core of the philosophy, it's love, it's eros, and it's the capacity to see these as the major force in the human being that made the human being try to reach the one, God. So there was no much contradiction according to him. Of course, he has to adjust many things because, for instance, by the end of his life, he wrote a book called De Vita Coeli Comparanda, which was dedicated to astral magic, basically. But Ficino was a doctor as well. So this was an example of holistic medicine, what today we call holistic medicine, because he was giving prescription on how to balance your life according to celestial forces. So, for instance, he was saying, if you feel yourself being too much melancholic because maybe you are an intellectual person, you study, you spend a lot of time inside studying, you just need to open yourself to the sun. And this means go outside in the sunlight and do activity related to the sun, like chant mantras, chant things, do music, and enjoy being the sun. And also have sun elements around you, because this is the basic of the natural magic. So to surround yourself of the substances related to this astrological principle. And if we're talking the sun, we're talking the primordial force, the many things related to the sun that you can use in your daily life, like, for instance, the sun color. You can dress yourself in sun color. You can use substances in your environment to remind of the sun, like saffron or other substances that help you connect. And the basic of this natural magic was related on sympathies of the substances. So you have, in this kind of philosophy that was Platonic and Neoplatonic, you have the chain of being, and each element you find on Earth was related to other elements inside the same chain and correspond to one celestial principle, to one planet. So there was this scheme.
And music too, wasn't he? He was into music, Ficino.
Oh, yes, he was into music, yes. Because he was a very melancholic person because of all his studies, and he had this Saturn on his ascendant in his chart, which, for people who's not familiar with astrology, means a very Senex approach to life, very devoted to knowledge, very devoted to spirit, and, quite of important and have... Sorry? Yes.
A study man.
He was a study man, and he was also so attuned with this melancholy. And so to balance this, because you don't want to get too melancholic, because this become an unbalance in your whole temperament. So you need to counterbalance this with the complementary principle. So we have to think also of Ficino as the first person who had this approach to holistic medicine. So try to find a balance within substances. And so he did this, and he used most of the knowledge he found in the sources, in the Hermetic sources, and in the Chaldean oracle that he read, and try to use them instead of creating a planetary talisman, which are objects like made of stone or metal. He tried to make medicament with this instruction in order to bypass the censorship of the Christian authority, and also to really use this thing in his life as a doctor. He was consulting, people was consulting him, asking for advice, so he wanted to be of help, and he promote this approach. So when we see what he'd been using in his practice, we always find this great fascination with the other side, with what we call astral magic, because there is one natural magic and there is astral magic. So natural magic is that belongs to substances and deals with the chain of being, of finding finding substance along the same chain of being, while the astral magic relate to finding the proper moment. Finding the moment when the sky reflect the intention you want to put in place with your action. So he kind of used both this approach, as did the Arabs. They were like the master of astral magic. And in doing this, he gives some example, and his example were related to always find moderation and balance. So like, for instance, when you speak about the three graces, these are the Sun, Venus, and Jupiter, you say that these planets are benefic because they brings moderation and balance. So, you know, this old way of seeing things that they get in equilibrium when there is moderation and there is this quality.
Some people might say, like I'm thinking of now, right?
Yes.
They might say that Venus doesn't bring moderation. I mean, what I'm trying to get at is Marilyn Monroe or something like that, but also, I don't know, for me, there's this idea of how to bring pleasure into life. And then maybe when you talk about that, people think of hedonism, a hedonistic way of life and that. But there seems to be more like a soul pleasure. So what would he say about all of that? What's a deep soul pleasure?
Well, so we have to say one thing that's quite important here, because also the way we've been perceiving Hermeticism has been characterized by our Christian filter, because we've seen Hermeticism it was treated as the same as Gnosticism. So with a huge split between matter and spirit that was not there in Hermeticism. There was not this split. If there is one thing that current study are bringing out, is that Hermeticism was a life-affirming philosophy where there was no split whatsoever between body and soul. This has been the Christian interpretation of it. So starting from this principle, there is nothing wrong in enjoying life with this pleasure. The point is not to get entrapped in there. So there is no moral whatsoever that tell you that you shouldn't enjoy life and all the beauty in life. You're supposed to do that. That's the reason why you have a body and you live on this planet. You're supposed to enjoy everything. But you have to remember that this pleasure wouldn't quench your deep thirst for something that's deeply Uranian, I would say, that's deeply celestial.
Celestial.
That's deeply, yes, because this thirst is only quenched when the soul get to the source. So there are many levels, and one level doesn't contradict the other. It's just, you know, it's just a matter of finding balance in it.
Yeah.
So we can think of Venus, and I know you love the pink madness that Hillman always mentioned when thinking of Venus. And we have, you know, even the Neoplatonic have two different kind of Venus to refer this. We have the terrestrial Venus and we have the celestial Venus. So this represents two kind of different love. One is very sensual and rooted in the body, and the other one belongs to the soul. But it's not that if you leave one, you negate the other. It's just you don't have to get lost.
Well, it's the joining. It's the joining. Well, maybe in terms of Hillman, when he says, in a way, the soul's in the middle between spirit and body, that it's an intermediary. It's kind of like so it's accessing to both. That's how maybe the language I would use, because it's a strange thing. You could say that people are very aware of Venus in the world, but then maybe not the full extent of things, or the not being in the middle between, as you say, the celestial and the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because also when you and I think this is a complete distortion, always coming from the same source. When we think about spirit, or we think about this philosopher and the teaching they gave us, what I'm trying to do in my personal research, I'm trying to make this teaching alive and to apply them in our daily life, because these are, nevertheless, they are philosophical teaching, but there's something in there that's really useful to us to live our life. It's deep knowledge. So I want to remove this moral judgment that to be a spiritual person, you have to completely negate your body and your emotion and your feeling. This is absolutely wrong. Yeah. You are a whole being. Yeah. And it's just this wholeness that will make you and will give you the privilege to be in contact with your soul. Just because, as you say, the soul is the thing in between, is the realm in between, where you can combine the higher and the lower forces. But there is no mention in this knowledge that the lower world is, you know, is full of sin, or is any less, or is bad. And there's
this big division between higher pleasure and lower pleasures as such.
No way. And it's not like this. And the main, and especially in Ficino as well, because we find this, he was a pious man, but he recognized the power of Eros, and it was the power of the universe. So this is the power that brings things together, doesn't create separation. Yeah. It brings things together in order to know them, want to fuse with them. So, you know, that there's this deep longing towards beauty, because beauty is the quality of the one, is the quality of God. So the work of man is to bring this beauty on earth and to incarnate this beauty in the material realm. That's really the work. It's not only, it's a bi-directional work. In a way, we try to ascend with our feeling and emotion, but what we really want to do is bring this beauty down and materialize it, because our action that creates something tangible in the world. It's not our speeches, our opinions. So we have to incarnate this beauty.
Well, going back a little, you know, you were talking about, I took up Venus, but You were talking about Jupiter, and what was the other? He said the beneficent
The sun.
and the
The
sun.
sun. Yes.
So where were
yes.
you going with that as well? What were you going to say about those?
Well, the sun has been, in all ancient philosophies and cult and religion has been equated to God because of the light. And light seems to be an attribute of the divinity in our culture. And so the sun is the primal source, and it's one of the main element we look at when we want to restore balance in our life, especially in matter of health. He was a doctor and he was really interested in restoring balance in the body. So it was important to use this principle in order to find this balance. And one of the things that he was stressing, it was like you don't need to use the opposite principle to restore this balance, but you want to use something complementary. So you can see this also along the line of something like homeopathic medicine, where you use the same principle to cure, not the opposite, which is, for instance, in allopathic medicine. So it's deep, and it goes back a long way.
Way back
to say,
Arabic magic.
Yeah. Well, yes. Also, it's a way of looking at things. What you don't want to overemphasize the opposite as well. Yeah. Because you just wanted to restore balance. You don't want to super excite the soul.
So give us some practical things about that. I mean, and it seems to me that, I was reading something this morning that this thing of where the binary nature of things today, that you have to choose this side or that side, or being forced to choose between sides, and that's become quite hard. So what does it mean for people living now, for people living their lives? Let's say on a psychological level, what would it mean?
Well, this is very personal, of course, and it's just my point of view. But for me, it means to try to be present and fully enjoy my life while not being completely entrapped in there, not thinking that the daily thing that I have to manage and do are all I have to deal with. But there is much more. And there is part of my life that I have to take care that is not tangible. And this part is related to my soul. And when we say, to take care of the soul, it's about nourishing this part. It's about taking care of this part. And usually, even if it's, well, this is quite Neoplatonic, but the way you take care of the soul usually is through beauty. And beauty comes in the form of arts, of knowledge. It can come in many ways. I mean, to me, it comes when I go out and see a beautiful sunset or a beautiful tree, and when I'm in nature. To me, it's really important, this relationship with nature, because it put me in contact with my own soul, the anima mundi, which is there. Reflect back to my soul the beauty of it. So to me, just as a way of going in your daily life is just to keep an eye on the different dimension you live. It's just to be citizen of different worlds, and not to complete
to tend to the beauty,
Yes.
As we're walking along the road.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, sometimes, like, I don't know, I was reading also someone the other day who talks about a post-activism, you know, because there's also this sense of, well, we have to do something, you know, we have to change something, we have to fix something. But to me, post-activism might just be what you were just talking about, you know, that kind of part of looking after our soul. That's looking after beauty. We should put that right up the priority list of our activism.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, I'm quite extreme because this is my approach, and I understand it's not everybody piece of cake, but you know that there's much more that we can take out from this teaching, and we can apply in our life. We don't have to invent. Nowadays, nothing is invented. It's all taken from the past and mix it in different sources. But there is value in this knowledge. There is value in searching for beauty, because it's something that really resonates with our soul, and we can, you know, we can do it in different ways according to our gift and to our interest. There are many ways of doing this, you know. Of
course. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you another thing about Ficino. Because, okay, we're talking about, and I'm not an expert by any stretch on you know, Hermetic philosophy or anything like that, but there's that stream. But then he also went back and translated Plato, and he went back to the Greek myths, didn't he? And so how did that come into what he was doing? What was he doing there with Plato?
So he in 1459, the Florentine Platonic Academy was set up, and he had already started to translate Plato and spend a lot of time on it. And you know, there's this basic assumption that, you know, at the beginning of everything was Plato, because the initial teaching came from him. And it's interesting that now the academic tried to present that in antiquity there were two different kinds of reading of Plato philosophy. One that was facilitating the split between body and soul, between spirit and matter, and this was the myth of the cavern, where you were supposed to see only shadows and reality was outside in the light. And this particular reading of Plato gave birth to this dichotomy of the split between body and soul. But it was not actually in there, because the quality of the one that Plato speaks, for instance, the nous that Plato mentioned has been identified with the mind, with rational. But what Plato has as mind was not our rational mind. It was something much bigger. It was something that we call the higher mind, where you do connection with all the part of your brain. It's not the rational logic where you see things in line going up from A to B. This is complete distortion of what Plato had in mind when talking about the nous, the mind of God. It's nothing to do with rational. So our culture, our Western culture, have been going along this line. Say, okay, the rational part is the higher part. Let's go along this line and see where we go. And this cuts off immediately not only the part of matter and the part of feelings and everything else, but all the feminine side. Because if you think rational, this is masculine energy that goes in a line, straight line. And so this is the result of 2000 years of reading Plato completely in a wrong way. And especially in the Dutch Academy now, they're doing a great job in translating this text and revealing that this dichotomy were not there. they're not there. And this absolute force of the rational mind that's characterized our culture is completely made up.
And getting back to the eros you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
I think sometimes it's like logos took over, didn't it? Like logos took things over, and
yes,
and eros is, as you say, that connecting principle of and love at the base. Can you
yes,
still hear me there?
Yes.
The microphone just fell over. Yeah. So what are you saying there about Ficino? He was refining Plato, but
yes.
you're trying to make that point that Plato is not as many people see Plato.
Well, many things came from him, so there are many approach, but the basic things that this identification with, all the Greek philosophy with logos, it's completely wrong, because there was not only the identification with the mind, it's a limit, but in Greek thought, there was a ritual part, there was another part that belonged to philosophy, and this part was ecstatic and had nothing to do with rational mind. And there were these things were interwoven in the individual of the time. There was not this split about, rational part and ecstatic part on the other side. They were part of the same culture. So we just took what we thought was convalidating our point of view in history, and get along with that. But what about the other side? What about that? It's not so much present in Ficino, but because he couldn't indulge in that direction too much, but in the Chaldean oracle, that was these ancient sources coming from the Chaldean people. There were all kinds of rites to contact divinity, and these rites were deeply ecstatic. You were not there with your mind thinking from A to B. You're seeing the god in front of you. Statues were coming alive and speak to you. And this was the result of a ritualistic practice that involved substances, involved prayers, involved
mystery cults, mystery traditions.
Yes.
Many of them, many different ones, to different gods. And
so, when we say that the Greek culture and philosophy belong to Logos, this is complete nonsense, because there was it's like the Apollinian and the Dionysic part. They've been always together, and each told us that in Greek culture, you can't divide them.
Yeah.
So, it's...
Have you ever read Catafalque by Peter Kingsley?
No.
He's an Englishman, but he also talks about the Socratic. I found it a little bit of a revelation to read it as well, because the pre-Socratic philosophers who were poets, seers, and mystics who actually went into the cave and incubated their dreams, and it gives you that other side of, it gives you a beginning of something, which was the poet, the shaman, the seer, they're not logos.
No, absolutely not. And you want to get me started talking about dreams, because I won't stop. But this is to say, there is another part of your life that doesn't belong to the daylight. There is a nocturnal life. That belongs to your soul. So when actually you mentioned these incubation rites that people would go in temples to receive messages from the gods, simply because once you close your eyes and you stop, your sensual activity stops and shut down, you actually wake up in a different realm. This is the imaginal realm, is the realm of your soul, your astral body. And you have a life there on your own, on his own, sorry. And this is not a life that you should interpret at the light of the sun, on a day, on a frame.
Through our daylight world thinking, our direct thinking. I have to do this, I have to go to the shop, and then I have to go there. It's
which is also the same way that Hillman was talking about dreams. You know, he was saying, you know, I don't get along with Freud and Jung because they both want to analyze the dream life at the light of the sun of consciousness, while we have to think that this is another life. It's an eternal, infernal life.
And I think Hillman's trying to say, you know, with regard to this life, that if people have a dream of a snake, everyone's got a theory about what that snake means, and everyone's doing the jumping to an interpretation. When what does it mean to just be with the snake? You know, the experiential nature. It seems to me he's trying to get with that.
Yes, there was a philosopher, also Neoplatonic philosopher, called Sinisi of Cyrene. He was in the 5th century, and he wrote extensively about dreams, and he was saying the same thing. Well, basically what he was saying, when you get a dream, the first thing you should do is start to contemplate the images of the dream, because it's in this contemplation that you get some useful insight about the dreams. It's not by wanting to translate it or to interpret it, but it's by entering in this process of resonance with the images.
Right.
And images are at the core of this philosophy. And this also what brought me to the field of astrological magic, because images are its core. So we have to think of this medial dimension of the soul. And the Neoplatonic philosopher would say that this medial dimension, where the soul is, has a subtle body, a body made of pneuma, which is breath. Now we will call it our astral etheric body, and the ancient called it the pneumatic body, the body made of breath. But this body is actually what we get from, while we come on Earth, we descend through the sphere of the planets, and each one of us from each planet gets a little piece of this energy. And at the end, there is an accretion of this planetary energy that creates man's temperament, what we in astrology we call temperament.
Yeah.
So this create our pneumatic body. And our pneumatic body is what make us capable of having a strong life of the soul, because the quality of dreams depend on this pneumatic body, and the quality of images we receive come from this body. So dreams come in the mix because it's all about images, and these images are a product of the soul.
Stay with the images, as Hillman said, but then also, who was it you were mentioning before? Silenius or
Synesios of Cyrenes. He was a student of the female philosopher Hypatia, a Greek. She had a Greek Neoplatonic school, and before she was martyred, he wrote for her this huge treatise on dreams. where he was explaining what was so meaningful about dreams. And basically, it was this existence of your nocturnal life, your life of the soul, that you could take care. Because as you do take care of your physical body, you can take care of your pneumatic body. And to do this, you have to keep a sort of precepts in your life, like trying to focus on the virtues. So trying to, to be virtuous. But this doesn't mean to repress your instinct. It just means don't be enslaved of your instinct. And so you can focus on the higher quality, on the virtue, on the higher perspective on things. And so you turn to philosophy, you turn to knowledge to nourish this part of your soul.
Can I just come in for 1 second there, Sabrina? If you think back over your life, what was the one turning point that got you into all this stuff, that got you on this path?
It doesn't apply to me. There was no one turning point, because I've been creating this path little by little since I think I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, I was a strange kid, but looking back, like when I was 4 years old, 5 years old, I was capable of seeing spirits around me. So in myself, there's always been this
other side.
This deep connection with the other side. I've never thought that I'm citizen only of this world. So it's not something happened to me and I realize, no, it's just little by little, I find a little step that helped me define the feeling that I had when I was a child and the thing that I was seeing, and put it into context. And, therefore, since I studied psychology, I started studying astrology because I was interested in how the universe codified this language to speak to us.
Yeah.
And from there went following spiritual path from Buddhism to shamanism. So it's been all my life going in this direction and slowly putting the piece together to the point that now everything
is syncretism, coming together, different, what seem like disparate elements, but they're not, they're complementary.
Yes, I would say that all the things that I've been studying and practicing in my life, they come together now in this kind of unified perspective.
And can we talk a little bit about astrology? So when or your astrology practice, can you speak a little bit to that?
Okay, so astrology links in this because it was one of the most important art practices in the Hermetica. And astrology is the practice that give you, and the knowledge that give you the right timing and that explain to you that everything in the material world appear at the same moment that something manifests in the higher world, in the celestial world. So there is this deep correspondences from the lower and higher sphere. And you can apply this knowledge from starting from the individual. So you can analyze a natal chart of a person is born in a particular place and time. And in that particular place and time, the stars were combined in such a way that this singular individual was born. And this differentiate one person from the other. But you can say, well, there are many persons born at the same time. Yes, but not exactly in the same place. So there are nuances and differences that makes this quite personal. Not only that, from the astrology and from astrological analysis, we can not only find information that relate to our psychological view in life or the things that happen to us, but we can find different kind of insight going from more practical to more philosophical one. So we can start, you can go to an astrologer and have a consultation to find out why this year you having a problem in your relationship, for instance, and see what kind of archetypal elements are reviving in your chart. What happened now? What the transit in the heaven are stimulating or are enlivening in your chart, in your natal chart. And have an understanding on the psychological level, on the level of what things are heading. But you can do even a more subtle inquiries, because astrology can also respond to this kind of philosophical knowledge. So you can inquire, for instance, the quality of your demons from astrology as well, because as we say, you descend down from the planets, you take a little bit from all the planets, depending on what? Depending on your previous life. You now come and collect the fruits of your previous life of metempsychosis. So what you do, you end up with a specific temperament that's your own, and it's particularly yours. And you can also inquire
a little flavor, a little essence of the planets, a little flavor of Mars, a little flavor of Jupiter, a little.
Yes, and this creates a unique combination where in the end, one or two planets stands out and give you a mark in a way.
Yeah.
At the soul level.
A daimonic mark, do we say?
Yes, a daimonic mark. Yeah, we can discuss if it's one or there are many, but you know, this is open to debate, of course. But the different kind of inquiries you can do at this level. And then there is another level that, since I'm also a practitioner of astrological magic, and this it's beautifully explained by Ficino, because Ficino was saying, you know, everything that exists in this world has this seminal cause in the anima mundi. So there is a seed there that makes everything living on earth grows. So if it happened that something is damaged on the material level, you can recreate it from the seminal cause. Right. And this is deep. This is deep because when things are damaged at this level, you go directly. And the seminal level is this kairos, where we align with the cosmos and the celestial. We find the optimal configuration in the heaven to work with this principle. So let's say there is damage on the level of Venus on a practical level, okay, in terms of relationship. And we want to do something at this level. We want to work with the celestial Venus and try to find a moment. And here astrology is pivotal, because it's only with astrology that you can do electional astrology, and find the moment when Venus actually dignifies, it's in power and can fulfill your requests to create a new Venus energy in your life. So what you do, you fix this energy on an object that Ficino instructs us should be an art object like a stone or a metal. These are the precious receptacle. But not only that, it's also interesting because in astrological magic, we talk about baits. these are based to the celestial soul to be seducted and calm down.
Okay.
So this object needs to be beautiful and shining. So this is the relation with stone and metal, because the shiny quality of the spirit have to be seduced from this object in order to calm down.
It's like, is that what some people call sympathetic magic as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Sympathetic is sometimes used in a very different way in English. I don't know in Italian, but simpatico or yeah.
Well, when we talk about sympathetic magic, we will usually intend what I was talking previously. Surround yourself with element of that planet, and this doesn't involve any magic. Okay, when you do astrological magic, you have a setup time that you have searched previously, and you do a ritual where you engrave certain images, because you need the images in order to have the celestial spirit to come. You don't only need the material, the right receptacle, but you need the image. The vehicle for everything is the image. So you engrave this stone or metal with the image of the planet or the celestial spirit, and you have a ritual invocation for this spirit to come down. And so this opens to different level of interpretation, because on one level, as I was saying, you can restore power that is damaging your life. But on the other level, the Neoplatonic were saying, by doing this, you surround yourself by celestial spirit, and this immerse yourself in this spiritual dimension that make your soul growth. It's a proper place for your soul to be.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think, in my, what is the word? Gaining some of the essence of what you're talking about is that these, this knowledge, this kind of knowledge, what some people call esoteric knowledge, what some people call hidden knowledge, Platonic knowledge, Hermetic knowledge, was so much a function of that transformation, so much a part of that transformation, and that this is something that can also be drawn on at this time of transformation.
Yes.
To bring into our lives. I wonder whether you can say where Hillman, because I know you like Hillman as well. Where do you think he stands with what's his, moving on from the Renaissance to now for a while?
Well, he was deeply sympathetic with all this mythology and also with the astrological knowledge. It just didn't want to be identified with it. Just he had interest in it, but he was talking broadly on the archetypal and mythical level. So I think where Hillman comes in is just he was trying to bring this knowledge back into psychology. And he was trying to demedicalize psychology, because what happened in our society is that psychology got really medicalized and had just to deal with, pathology. And there was no link with the dimension of the soul. Was completely lost. So the huge value of James Hillman was to bring the soul back into psychology and brings the dimension of images. He was huge on imaginative life. And I think this is where Hillman stands out compared to previous psychologists, even if I do love Jung as well, or Freud, but there is something different in Hillman. There is something that more next to us in terms of we can relate it more easily to his way of seeing and way of talking about psychology than it was. I think, in my point of view, we are too far away culturally and socially from Jung and his kind of environment.
Oh, well, and also he was in that scientific milieu and he had to work within that framework of science and all that, whereas Hillman kind of just has gone back into the imagination, the image, like you can say, if you wanted to use a football analogy, like Jung did a lot of the hard work, the grunt work, and then Hillman's kind of reconnected to a lot of that past thinking. Well, not necessarily. I mean, there are different aspects to it, but so many wonderful things that Jung has said, and in many cases they're saying a similar thing in a slightly different way. I find as well.
I mean, I love the way Hillman's work with mythology and present things as this goddess and gods that we have completely lost touch with. And this, I believe, is the core message of our interest today and our way of talking about these things. It is about, trying to reconnect this knowledge to our daily life, to our practice, and Hillman did a wonderful work in this sense, because we need to re-enchant the world to be part of this enchantment and to feel this connection with subtle reality, because literalism is really the death of the human being. If you just approach things literally, you there's no way out. I mean, there's no hope, no beauty.
or just politically as well. I think sometimes it's this other dimension. Like here in Australia, we just had a referendum. I don't want to go too much into this, but we just had a referendum for Australian Aboriginal people to have a voice to the Parliament. But the conversation stays on that political level. When sometimes for me, what's so interesting is the dreaming, the Aboriginal, the core of Aboriginality, the dreaming, the song lines, the what goes out from the song lines. There's so much of the spiritual wisdom and indigenous wisdom, and that's when I think of beauty, I think of that nourishment of deep spiritual wisdom as well. It's like it's something that nurtures us and deepens us.
Yes. Well, I believe that the core principle of all these things that I've been talking about is that we have to be open to complexity and multiplicity. We can't polarize with one thing, but this is where politics go. It's ideology, is wanting things black and white. Everything has to be simple in order to be catalogized, but this doesn't respond to the reality of life. Life is complex. There are many levels and many nuances, and you can't engage yourself in this way, thinking externally. I have to find external solution. Yes, this is about politics. So I do believe that things come in place in society whenever there has been a mature process behind it. So now it's great to see that, place like Australia, or sometimes even the United States, they're opening to the native people and want to make amends for what happened in history. It's wonderful. But still, we have a long way to go to accept diversity and different kind of thinking, of, you know, feelings, different perspective in life.
Yeah. And I think I like, you know, maybe this is kind of, we're getting towards a good place to finish, but I think, you know, what I've taken from what you've been talking, well, many things. I've taken many things from what you've been talking
Thanks,
about. But one thing is that all of the different planets, you know, that's diversity, isn't it? And
yes.
And they are so different, but they're all there together and yeah, and to taste all of the flavors of, you know, maybe there's one that dominates a little, but there's all of the flavors of all the planets.
Yes, yes. And the point is to deal with this complexity that each one of them has, because each one of them would have light and dark in it, would have, you know, positive and negative attribute that we need to explore, to take care and to hold. You know, that we need to contain all this. We don't need to cut off. We just need to contain. That's why I think our culture is trying to reintegrate this feminine principle of making space, embracing everything. Acceptance, this feminine quality that really lacks in our culture.
Well, thank you very much, Sabrina. It's been very interesting, and I've enjoyed talking to you, and you've shared many things. So thank you.
Thank you so much, John. It was my pleasure to be here and talk with you, and to your audience. Thanks a lot.